significant people, people that you're going to use, but me, I'm just insignificant. The moment that God called me to district office, He spoke to my heart. I said, God, you can't use me. I'm just a youth pastor in Pembroke. I'm too young. I come from a single parent family. God, I'm so insignificant. Time after time after time after time, the enemy has lied to me and told me that I'm an insignificant person. But look at what the passage says in Ephesians. It says, for He chose us in Him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in His sight. In love, He predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ in accordance with His pleasure and will. Let's keep it there just for a second. Let me just walk you through it. He chose us. He wants you. He chose you. He chose you as part of His family. And I'm not going to get into a big theological discourse about predestination. You're not any more special than anybody else in the world. But those who accepted Jesus, He knew from the time of creation that you would be predestined. Those who chose Him were predestined to be His sons. He said, the people who will choose me, those are going to be my sons. Those are going to be my daughters. He adopted you. Oh, listen to me for a second. You're not just a Christian. You're not just a CPC member. You're not just a visitor. You gave your life to Jesus. You're His kid. Friends, you are the son or daughter of the guy who created the entire universe. That's who you are. I mean, that's not insignificant. That's not insignificant. You are His son. You are His daughter. And then it says through Jesus Christ in accordance with His pleasure. Listen to me for a second. You think you're insignificant? Do you know that God takes pleasure in you? He takes pleasure in you. He looks down at your life and He says, oh man, look at Jeff. I'm so glad he's preaching. I like it when he preaches. Even if nobody else does. God's there. Cheer me on. Oh, I love my son Jeff. I take great delight in my son Jeff. I am pleased with my son Jeff. And He stands over your lives, and there's a smile upon His face as He looks down upon you. Some of you think that every time God looks at you, He's got this grumpy look. Like God's had no sleep for 6 days, and He's just ready to go off, and He's irritated with you. No, friends, you're His kid, and He takes great delight in you. And He wills, listen to that, He wills that you would be part of His family. You want to know something? You're not insignificant. Every person in this place has a significance to God. He has you in His wallet. There's a picture. I'm imagining He goes through heaven going, hey, Michael, have you seen my child? Have you seen this other kid right here? Have you seen this person right? Oh, I love this person. And He loves you. You are significant in His sight. Ainsley and I've always had this rule in our home since we got into ministry, that our kids could have access to us no matter what. No matter what. We knew that there would be moments that would be inconvenient, but our kids would have access to us no matter what. Bailey this week texted me. He says, hey, Dad, do you have a minute? Busy day. I was like, absolutely, access to me right away. And I've traveled, and I've had many special guests into the events that I've run. And I'll be I have sat in rooms with some pretty well-known evangelists, some people who are incredibly well-known now, who have been traveling through the world, musicians who are the superstars. And I sit and I talk with them. Then Bailey walks in the room. Then Brock walks in the room. Then Briar walks in the room. And I don't care how good the preacher is. I don't care how musical that band member is. I don't care how famous the guest is. The most important person in the room is my kid. The most important person in the room is my kid. You see, the musician will go on. The evangelist will go on. But my kid is my kid. And they're the most important people in my life, my 3 kids. They're so important to me. They have incredible significance. And in fact, friends, my family, my wife, my 3 kids have more significance in my life than any of you. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Because they're mine. And that's what God says over you. The enemy lies to you and says you're not significant, you're a nobody. And God goes, no, put on your helmet of salvation. Don't you know what I called you? And when I saved you, I called you to be my kid. I called you. And some of you need to start walking around with the helmet of salvation saying, no, enemy, I'm not insignificant. I'm not a loser. I am the child of God. I have His favor. He actually smiles over me. Everybody at work may not smile over me, but He smiles over me. You see, the truth is that I am significant. I'm spiritually rich. I'm significant. Thirdly, I am free. I am free. The enemy will say to you, you are a slave. Oh, you're a slave. You see, we believe that we're slaves to sinful things. I've been around some Christians, and they constantly are getting angry, and you talk to them about it, well, you know, my father was angry. My grandfather was angry, and so that's just part of me. People who deal with lust. Well, you know, I'm just human, and I'm a man, and so that's just, you know, that's just the way it is. People who gossip, well, you know, I struggle with that. I know, it's just, but I'm human, and God understands that. People who are fearful, look, I know, but that's just me. You know, my mom struggled with fear too, and it's just part of who I am. And the enemy convinces you that you are a slave to those things, that you have to keep lusting, that you have to keep being angry, that you have to keep holding on to fear, that you have to keep holding on to some of those addictions that maybe are prominent or maybe are just secretive, that you have to, because that's always been part of your life. It's always been part of your family. It's part of who you are. You're human. The enemy will lie to you and say that you are a slave to those things. They did a study a few years ago. They took the school, and there was these kids who would play in the school at recess. And the kids knew that they couldn't go past a certain distance in the playground because there was a fence around that playground. They'd go right to the edge. But they wouldn't go any further because they knew that they couldn't go to the other side. One day the school board decided to do something. They said, we're going to take down that fence and see what happens. They took down the fence, and interesting enough, the kids didn't explore further. They kept staying in the area that they believed they were supposed to be in. They stayed within the playground, even though the fence was gone. And that's what the enemy is doing to some of you. God's taken down the fences in your life. God's broken the chains in your life. God's removed the prisons for your life. And he's saying, hey, why don't you go out there and experience the freedom that I gave you? And you're listening to the enemy who's going, no, just stay in the playground. Just stay in the playground. Just stay. You're still sinful. You're still lustful. You're still greedy. You're still a critic. You're still this. And he keeps speaking these things over our life. But look at this scripture in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 7 and 8. It says, in him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins in accordance with the riches of God's grace that he lavished on us. That he lavished on us. This word redemption means to pay back. And it has a connotation primarily used in this passage that deals with slavery. And what it's saying is that God has paid the price for you to no longer be a slave. You see, when you put on the helmet of salvation, you are saying to the enemy, you may accuse me of being a slave. You may tell me that I've got to keep acting that way. But I have been redeemed in Jesus Christ. I have been set free in Jesus Christ. I no longer have to keep living this way. I no longer have to keep dealing with those things. I am free. Listen to me. Some of you need to hear this truth incredibly today. You're free. You're free. Oh, sir, you don't need to deal with those thoughts anymore. Oh, ma'am, you don't need to deal with those things in your heart anymore. The enemy will go, oh, yeah, well, it's always been there. No, listen to me. The Bible says that he redeemed you. He came to the prison of sin that you were in. He went to the enemy and he says, I'm paying the price for their freedom today. And the price I'm going to pay is not a few dollars. It's not a few coins to Caesar. But I'm paying the price of my life. And Jesus laid down upon a cross. And the moment that he said, it is finished, the gates came open. The prison walls fell down. The chains came off. And friends, some of you were standing there in the prison, and you simply needed to walk out the doors. Because he made you free. He made you free. Enemy comes and tempts. I've been thinking about it all week. Every time he tries to say something, hey, Jeff, think this. Hey, Jeff, have this attitude. Hey, Jeff, have this. I've been all week going, no. I'm free. I don't need that garbage in my life. No, I don't need that attitude in my life. No, I don't need to say those words. No, I don't need to do that. No, enemy, don't you know that I am free? And I'm not getting myself in chains again. See, Jesus said in John chapter 8, he who the Son sets free is free indeed. He who the Son sets free is free indeed. Friends, say this with me. I am free. I am free. I am free. I don't care what the enemy says to you. You're free in Jesus Christ. Oh, friends, you're free. I don't know about you, but when you get set free, you just want to rejoice and dance and jump. I don't know. There's this life inside of you. I was driving back from downtown yesterday. We went to Winterlude, and I was in Shane Crozier's car with Brock and my brother-in-law. His car is small, and literally, I'm in the back seat against the window like this. I was in prison. And then all of a sudden, I had to go to Walmart and get some buns, and I opened the door, and it was like freedom. One leg out. I got out of the car. I felt so alive. I know that sounds weird, but I felt so alive. I sure didn't want to have to go back to that prison, although I did. Some of you aren't experiencing life because the enemy keeps telling you you're a slave. Let me tell you one more time. You're not a slave to lust. You're not a slave to anger. You're not a slave to gossip. You're not a slave to any addiction. You're not a slave to greed. You're not a slave to selfishness. You're not a slave to gossip. You're not a slave to backbiting. You're not a slave to anything unhealthy. You are free in Jesus Christ. You're free. Free. I'm rich. I'm spiritually rich. I'm significant. I am free. And now here's the last one. I'm doing good for time. I am powerful. I am powerful. You see, the enemy will give you this fourth attack. He'll say, you're weak. You can't make it. Oh, Jeff, you're weak. You can't make it. Some of you just keep looking at the enemy. Oh, he's so powerful. The enemy's just, he's attacking me this week. And you're walking through life like you're the runt in a wrestling match. You're just kind of walking, the enemy's just been attacking me. He's so powerful. He's been taking out this in my life. He's been doing this in my life. And I'm so weak. I just can't make it. And he's going, yeah, that's the mindset I want them to have. That's the mind games I want to play on them. And you're walking through life and you're just believing. You're believing that you are weak. You see, the enemy will magnify his power and minimize who you are. He will magnify his power because he doesn't have a whole lot. And he'll minimize what's in your life because, friends, you have the Holy Spirit, who, by the way, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this as the senior pastor, but the power of the Spirit kicks butt for the enemy. I mean, he kicks his behind all across the street. That's the power that's inside of me. That's the power that's inside of me. In 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 15 to 17, we know the story of Elijah. He's being pursued by the Aramean army because every time the Arameans try to attack the Israelites, Elijah gets a word from God and gives instructions to the king. There's one day Elijah's servant is going out to get some milk from the goats. Opens the door, and he sees this incredible army. He closes the door and walks back in. He begins to sweat. His hands begin to tremble. His knees begin to shake. He rushes over to Elijah, who's there asleep, and he wakes him up. Elijah, you got to wake up. Just let me sleep for 5 more minutes. No, Elijah, get up now. Get up now. Keeps shaking him. Elijah finally gets to the bed and goes, what is it, servant? What is the problem? Come here. Don't come, tiptoe. Come over here. Look. Could you open the blinds a bit more? No, I can't. Just look. What am I looking at? Do you not see the Aramean army? That's what some of us feel like. We're standing behind curtains going, oh my goodness, I can't go out into this world. The enemy's so strong. The devil's out of control in Canada. We're standing behind the curtains. I'm so thankful for the church because we can hide in here because there's a devil out there. And he works beside me in work. You know, some of you are thinking that. Not Pastor Adam. Just in case you're wondering. But some of us are hiding behind the blinds and we're looking out at the enemy and we're so afraid because it seems like Canada's going the furthest direction away from God. We're so afraid of what the enemy will do. And Elijah goes, servant, look. And he just closes his eyes. God, could you just open his eyes to reality? Could you open his eyes to reality? And all of a sudden, the servant's eyes see something. Beyond the Aramean army, he sees this other army. It's the army of God. It's the army of God in the background. This powerful army that can take out any army. I mean, this army is not even bothered. This army didn't even bring everybody to the battle because this army only needs a few soldiers who will take out this Aramean army. And this is what God is saying to you today. Some of you need your eyes open. Some of you need your eyes open to the power that's on your side, the power that's in you. You keep looking at the enemy thinking he's so powerful. You don't know what you've got. You don't know what you've got. Look at the passage right now. Ephesians chapter 1, I believe it's verse 13 and 15 or something. Anyways, I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened and that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people, and his incomparable, there's nothing like it, great power for us. For who? For who? For who? It's his great power that's incomparable for us. And it says who believe that power that we have for us, that power is the same. Oh, it's not just an imitation. Oh, it's not just an alternative, a cheap knockoff that you buy in some black market. It's actually the same power, the same as the mighty strength he exerted when he raised Christ from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly realm. Let's keep going. Look at this. Far above all rule and authority, power and dominion, and every name that is invoked, not only in the present age, but also in the one to come. And God placed all things under his feet and appointed him to be head over everything for the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills everything in every way. For us, the power is the same power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead. For us, the power that's inside of us is the same power that declared that Jesus was greater than any dominion, greater than any authority, greater than any enemy, greater than any attack on our lives. That's the power that's for me, and that's the power that's for you. That's the power that we have. That's the power we have. There's this kid in grade 8. His name was Blake Arscott. Blake was just a short kid, hockey player, and we used to hang out together. There was this kid, I can't remember his name, but this other kid who wasn't in our class, but he was the school bully. And he would go around and he would torment people, and he'd make comments to people and say all kinds of things, and nobody ever wanted to say anything back because we didn't want to have our face rearranged. Kept happening. The enemy kept this grade 8 kid. This grade 8 kid just kept bullying us, just kept bullying people. He'd make comments, he'd intimidate, he'd manipulate situations, just kept intimidating. We wanted to stand up to the enemy, but we knew that he was more powerful than us. Big guy. One day, Blake was in the schoolyard's recess, and this enemy came up to him and started to bully him, say some things, try to provoke him. Blake was way shorter than him. But something rose up inside of Blake. He all of a sudden recognized that there was a might in him that he hadn't grabbed hold of yet. And friends, I'm not advocating this, but it was a beautiful moment. And Blake Arscott took his fist, said, "I don't care who you are, enemy, but you're going down." And he started to punch this bully in the face over and over and over again until this guy dropped to the ground. The guy who looked bigger was no bigger inside than Blake was. Blake took a power that he had inside of him, and the little guy took out the big guy. And it reminded me to this week that that's what God wants you to recognize. That even though the enemy looks huge, even though he's trying to bully you around, even though he's trying to say things to irritate you, that there is this power inside of us that causes our hand to kick back. And we say, "Hey, enemy, you want to go? I'm ready. I'm ready, because the power inside of me is the same power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead. And so there's nothing inside of you that's greater than what's inside of me. There's nothing. You see, you are not a spiritual pauper. You are rich in Christ. You are not insignificant. Put on your helmet of salvation and know that you are the most significant person in God's mind. You need to know, friends, that you are not a slave, but you are free. And you are not a weakling who's just trying to get over the finish line into heaven. You are the enemy's greatest threat because he knows that the power that existed at that defeat in Jerusalem when Jesus Christ rose from the dead, that power didn't go away with Jesus to heaven, but that power got dissipated into his church. And a church that recognizes the power inside of them can do anything for God, and he will destroy the enemy. You need to put on the helmet of salvation. You see, some of you, when you got saved, you thought your salvation was merely a ticket to heaven. That's all you thought. I'm going to give my life to Jesus. I'm going to give my life to him, and now I've got my ticket. I'm going to carry this thing around. It's going to get me into heaven. As long as I can get through this life, I'm going to stand before Jesus and go, and he's going to say, hey, you got your ticket? Yep, got my ticket right here. Where's my mansion? Where is it? Where are the streets of gold? I got my ticket. Special ticket. It's upside down. I got my ticket. God is here today to say this. Salvation is more than a ticket to heaven. Salvation is about who you become. Salvation is the identity that God gives you. He replaces something that the enemy, if he were to speak of, he would be telling the truth. If you weren't saved and the enemy came to you and said you're weak, the truth is you are weak. But when we got saved, our Father took our old identity, he ripped it up, and he gave us a brand new identity. We put on this helmet of salvation that speaks of who we are. And we say, enemy, don't you know that when I gave my life to Jesus, don't you know when I gave my life to Jesus that he gave me access to every spiritual blessing? Don't you know that? Don't you know that I can hear from him? Don't you know that I can pray for miracles? Don't you know that I can do some significant things? Oh, enemy, don't you know that when I put on my salvation, I went from being a loser to being the most significant person? I became his son. I became his daughter. Oh, enemy, don't you know? My Father's looking over my shoulder because I'm his kid. I am so significant. Oh, enemy, don't you know when I put on my helmet of salvation? Don't you know when I gave my life to Jesus that I let go of the chains? I let go of the prison. I walked out of that place, and I'm here free. And I can dance, and I can shout, and I can sing because, oh, enemy, I'm free. Don't throw me that junk anymore. I don't want those chains. I'm free in Jesus Christ. And enemy, don't you know that when I got saved, I put on my helmet of salvation, and there was a power that was placed inside of me that's the same power that raised Jesus from the dead. Enemy, if there's anybody who should be shaking in their boots, it's not me, it's you. It's you. It's you. Oh, friends, it's time to put on our helmet of salvation because we are something incredible in Jesus Christ. Would you stand with me this morning? Pastor Steve's going to lead us in this song, and I want you to stand in this place as God's child, helmet of salvation on, and I want you to sing this with everything you got. Pastor Steve, lead us this morning.
Our God, almighty warrior, you're a consuming fire. In victory you reign. We triumph in your name. Jesus, the great commander, you conquered death forever. In victory you reign. We triumph in your name. Our God, almighty warrior, you're a consuming fire. In victory you reign. We triumph in your Our God, a mighty warrior, you're a consuming fire. In victory you reign. We triumph in your name. Jesus, the great commander, you conquered death forever. In victory you reign. We triumph in your name. Our God, a mighty warrior, you're a consuming fire. In victory you reign. Up in your name. Jesus, the great commander, you conquered death forever. In victory you reign. We triumph in your name.
Amen. We don't triumph in ourselves. Oh, but when Jesus Christ is part of the story, we triumph in his name. I know who I am. I know who I am. And I'm not allowing the enemy to tell me things that aren't true and rob me of years and years of my potential. I'm not going to allow the enemy to lie to me and tell me things that the Bible tells me are not true. I listen to what he declared over my life, and that's how I live. Would you bow your heads and just close your eyes just before I close this service? You're in this place and you're kind of wondering, how could there be so much life here? Well, why are these people so crazy? Why are they so celebratory? The fact is that we understand who we are in Jesus Christ. We know what Jesus did on the cross. And maybe you've been going through life and you feel robbed, you feel alone, you feel insignificant, feel bound to sin. I'm here today to tell you that Jesus didn't just die for the people who are part of this church. He died for you. He wants you to be his son. He wants you to be his daughter. And you simply need to say, Jesus, I'm sorry for my sins. I take you as my Lord, and I want to be part of your family. If you're in this place and say, Pastor, I've never given my life to Jesus, or maybe you're in a place where you've walked away and say, I want to give my life back to Jesus, would you just raise your hand, just wave it at me really quickly? I want to just pray for you this morning. Is there anybody in this place? Anybody in this place? Just wave at me quickly. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? One last chance. Thank you. Thank you. It's awesome. Listen, there's going to be a few people here just at the front, some of our prayer team. And if you just raised your hand, I'm going to ask that you just come to the front as soon as I finish praying, and one of our prayer team is going to meet with you, and they're just going to talk to you about what you just did, about you raising your hand and what this means. But friends, as we close this service, here's my challenge. Every day this week, would you wake up in the morning and know who you are? Just grab hold of one of these truths. I am rich in God. I am significant. I am free. And I am full of power. Would you let your day be lived by the truth of what God has declared over you? Don't let the enemy play mind games. You're his. You're God's. You're the Savior's. So Jesus, this morning as we walk out of this place, I thank you so much for what you did. God, I thank you.